Gruß. Willkommen in einem aufregendes video. Welcome to another exciting video, in this case episode 12 of my organisational series. In this video I'll be providing a view of the French World War II divisional's combat strengths. I'll be using the point system from the Corps Commander set of rules. The point system is based largely on physical attributes of the various weapon systems such as armour thickness, gun penetration rates, weight of fire, speed, special combat features and so on. The primary formation I'll be focusing on is the battalion. Companies will be included when they are support formations or when unavoidable. Viewers need to understand that 100 points of tanks will operate very differently from 100 points of infantry. Thus, comparing tank battalions with infantry battalions need to be done through a subjective filter. However, comparing a tank battalion in 1942 with one in 1945 is valid. This shows a simple breakdown of the divisional regiment and battalions that I'll be using in this video. After the formation name, there are two values. The first is the Corps Commander points value, and the second being the value divided by 250. The points value gives you an idea of the combat capability of the formation, and the second value provides for a simpler view. You need to note that while figure gaming points provides a rough way of ensuring force mixes are balanced, they can never be perfect. If one formation is 1000 points and the other is 1001 points, it does not mean the latter will win any conflict. As a result, it's best to look at this value several orders of magnitude higher. Thus, dividing by 250 gives you a simpler value, where a value of 2 is clearly inferior to a value of 3. The first French involvement in World War II was the Saar offensive in September 1939. France's next involvement was with the Norwegian campaign or offensive in 1940, ranging between May and June 1940. This was then followed or occurred around about the same time by the German invasion of France in May 1940. Finally, this was then followed by the Italian invasion of France in June 1940. Let's now drill into the divisions, starting with the infantry divisions. The French divided their infantry divisions into three series. The A series was the best equipped and had the highest level of training and morale. The French infantry division was reasonably well structured and equipped, even if smaller than the German equivalent. The B series infantry division was equipped as well as the A series, but the troops had a higher number of reservists. The B series infantry division had similar levels of combat strength to the A series, even if the quality of the troops may be less, which is not reflected in this chart because I'm not looking at quality. Finally, the C series infantry divisions were manned by reservists, and these also had less equipment or slightly less quality of equipment. The main difference in this series division compared to the previous was a reduction in artillery. In the field, many of these divisions also lacked their anti-tank battalion. Another type of infantry division, the French fielders, was their light divisions. This shown here being a colonial type of light infantry division. In terms of equipment, the light divisions were very similar to the C series infantry division, lacking an artillery battalion. The colonial divisions were, on the other hand, of very high quality. The standard light infantry divisions fielded in France were weaker than the colonial variety, as well as having less experience and training. The standard French light division that was fielded or formed in France did not possess a 105mm howitzer battalion. The French also fielded field mounted divisions on the front facing Italy, and these divisions performed very well in their brief fight with the Italians. The French mountain divisions were large and very well equipped, possessing a 155mm howitzer, which is a bit unusual for mountain divisions of the period. The French also formed a special division for the Norwegian campaign, in this case the 1st Division Léger de Chasseurs. The DLCH, or Light Chasseur Division, were small but highly specialised troops, which I have to assume were highly equipped and highly motivated and highly trained, so they were very good quality. Let's now move to the motorised formations. The French motorised divisions were all Series A, thus contained a high proportion of regular troops. The motorised division contained a number of company-sized support formations, divided being under the divisional command and under the regimental command. I've combined both together, but this contained anti-tank and engineering assets as well. This formation contained strong infantry battalions with good support and with an armoured battalion, making it, in theory, a very effective division. When we moved to more armoured formations, the French fielded mechanised cavalry divisions, which in theory could have been very effective mechanised divisions if the cavalry was left behind. There were many different structures, this being the first DLC. This division contained the mechanised infantry, which were carried in tracked armoured personnel carriers, a good mix of infantry and armour, but lacking artillery support, and most of the battalions were small. The next DLC division, in this case the second DLC, differed in the way its artillery was equipped, or artillery regiment was equipped. The difference with this particular DLC division was the replacement of a 75mm gun battalion with a 105mm howitzer battalion. The third and fourth DLC were probably the closest to a standard or using a standard DLC structure, as the two divisions shared the same TO&E. Compared with the other DLC divisions, the division support was weaker, but was otherwise the same as the second DLC. I'm guessing the French were experimenting on the optimal structure for these divisions, thus the three different TO&Es. When or after the German invasions, it was clear the French had not completed with their experimentation and created yet another structure for the fifth DLC division. In this case, the divisional support was beefed up to match the first and second DLC divisions. The other change was the motorised battalion was beefed up as well, giving it greater combat strength. In my personal opinion, possibly the best armoured divisions the French fielded were the DLM divisions, which possessed a good infantry armour mix. This division possessed a lot of company-sized support formations grouped into divisional support and brigade support company-sized formations. Why the brigade support formations were under the divisional HQ is a mystery. I suspect the divisional HQ allocated these resources out as required to the brigades. The artillery regiment was reasonable for a French formation. The real strength was the mechanised battalions, which were very effective and reasonably large. The division contained the excellent S-35 medium tank, although their numbers were comparatively small. One thing I noticed when doing an analysis of the French TO&E, the French really like to experiment, and when they formed the third DLM, its structure again changed a bit. For this DLM division, the 105mm howitzer battalion was removed, which I feel probably was an error, in my personal opinion. On the other hand, a Cuirassier Armoured Reconnaissance Regiment was added, which really beefed up its armoured offensive capability. When we go to the fourth DLC, guess what? Additional changes were made in the TO&E, so the experimentation was not ending at this particular point. For this division, the artillery was absent, but an armoured reconnaissance regiment was added. This was probably created from whatever formations were available at the time, so probably didn't represent an experimentation, more as an emergency measure in order to get a division in the field ASAP. The seventh DLM was formed during the invasion and was made up of formations which happened to be available, so this was even a more extreme version of the previous structure. In this case, the divisional support is reduced, but the artillery support is significantly higher. Finally, the armour is almost non-existent, so, it's only a borderline armour division in this particular case. The French DCR divisions were considered the primary armoured forces in the French army. However, these were very unbalanced divisions. This division contained one artillery battalion and one rather good mechanised battalion. This division lacked non-armoured support, however. The armoured battalions were reasonable, but even though the Char B1 was a good heavy tank, their numbers do not allow the heavy tank battalion to be a truly mega battalion. This is actually common with most combatants. Whenever they came out with a heavy tank, they always reduce the size of the battalion formation rather than actually make a mega formation, and this is probably the correct course of action. When we go to the third DCR division, this was basically similar, containing an additional medium tank battalion, giving it a significantly more armoured punch. For this division, the divisional support was weaker, but the heavy tank regiment contained an extra medium tank battalion, really beefing up its armoured capacity. The 4th DCR Division was a hastily raised division and was made up of whatever formations the French could pull together quickly. The main changes for this division was related to divisional and regimental support, as well as a cavalry reconnaissance battalion attached to the division. As the French army surrendered, or France surrendered in 1940, we cannot compare the progression of the division structure, but we can compare some of the battalions against Italian battalions. When we compare the most common and important formations, there does not seem to be much difference between the nationalities. The French mounted battalions are significantly larger. In the light tank area, the only reason why the Italian tankette battalion is more powerful is due to sheer numbers of tankettes. In terms of the actual vehicles, the French light tank is significantly better. The medium tank battalions are a similar strength, but once again, the Italian medium tank battalions are larger, resulting in equality in terms of combat strength, even though the tanks in the battalions certainly weren't equivalent. The French medium tank is far more superior to any of the Italian tanks. The Italians lacked a heavy tank, so I'm not including that formation comparison in this particular case. It would have been interesting what the French would have done if they were not knocked out of the conflict so quickly. During the German invasion, they displayed extraordinary levels of innovation, and a lot of emergency armoured vehicles were under development, some of which were rather advanced in concept. This concludes episode 12 of my video series on organisation, in this case analysing the French army in World War II, specifically the estimated combat strength of the battalions which made up the divisions. Alle guten Dinge, kommen zu einem Ende.